TLDW, this game is fucking amazing. Well, today was very unexpected. As always when a Nintendo Direct happens, I always joke about, oh my god, there's gonna be a new F-Zero game today, guys, to my friends, and it actually happened for once. And while I may not have sounded very excited in the reaction video I posted, needless to say, I was very excited for a new F-Zero game, even if it was something small like this. As soon as the Direct ended, I got into a call on the F-Zero Nexus server and installed the game. And right now I want to give a mostly unscripted first impressions and thoughts of the game of F-Zero 99 coming from a F-Zero Super Nintendo top-level player. For those that do not know, on FZeroCentral.com, which is kind of the main hub for F-Zero time trials and speedruns, I am in the top 30 in the world in the F-Zero Super Nintendo time trial ladder. I don't know where exactly I am on the ladder, it has been a while, but I would like to say I'm pretty knowledgeable of the game and have also held minor world records with some of the non-viable machines, so I'm just going to give my general thoughts and impressions of the game. First thought, and even though it's really dumb and pretty minor, I really like the fact that the game is in widescreen and I get to see the Super Nintendo assets even if they are recreated in widescreen HD, which is really cool. I know it sounds really goofy, but I really appreciated that. Aside from that, I really like that a lot of the music in the game, well, all of the music aside from, you know, the originals, but a lot of the music in the game is remixes of some of the Super Nintendo songs, like the results themes and the credits, and it was really cool to see. In terms of the actual gameplay loop though, it's pretty fun. I haven't played any of the previous 99 titles that Nintendo has made. I missed out on Mario 35, I did not play Tetris 99 or Pac-Man 99, so I can't compare the quality of F-Zero 99 to those games. But I could still say, in my opinion, F-Zero 99 is really fun to play. I won't explain the gameplay very long, I'll be very brief about it, but essentially imagine the Super Nintendo game with the boosting mechanics of the later games and side attacks, combined with the fact that you're playing 98 other people at once. It's very similar to Death Race from F-Zero X, the Nintendo 64 one, but instead of it just being until you finish all 29 other drivers, it's condensed into 4 laps and whoever places first. But I really like a lot of the gameplay loops. It was kind of odd at first adjusting to it, but once you get into the rhythm of it, and once it all starts to click, I think the game starts to get really, really good. There's a lot more on-the-fly decision-making in this game compared to something like Super Nintendo. And I went into the decision-making for SNES normally in my previous video, the Master of Simple but Addicting Gameplay. This one you have to be a lot more active. It's not just dodging the snail AI drivers, which are back, by the way, but now you have to deal with every other person trying to hit you, and you trying to hit them, or maybe not hitting them, and focusing when should I boost, but if I boost here, would this mess up my line because somebody else is there? There's a lot more on-the-fly decisions, which is really weird to adjust to at first, being so used to the way the Super Nintendo works, where it's just kind of, not autopiloty, but a lot more simple. And I welcome it. I think it's a lot of fun, and once it starts to click, it just gets better and better and better as the game goes on. There was one time in a, just a series of racing, just doing the normal mode, I was playing really conservatively with my health, and I wasn't really boosting a lot, I wasn't being aggressive, but then I discovered, and I don't know if it's a tutorial or a tip, because I wasn't really reading, I will be honest, but I discovered that if you KO or destroy another machine, you gain some energy back, and it also increases your total amount of energy. And once I realized that, I started to play a ton more aggressive, and it was a lot of fun to adjust. I think the Super Sparks, which is the orange dots, the yellow dots that appear on the course that you can pick up and then use for like a super boost onto this new mechanic called the Skyway, which is just essentially a mega boost on top of the course, and it's pretty cool. I think it's a decent comeback mechanic. As someone that has played a lot of Mario Kart Clan Wars, I'm kind of used to, not BS comeback mechanics, but certainly one thing happens and it just spirals out of control. And I think the Skyway boost avoids that for the most part. The further back you are, the longer the boost lasts. and the easier it would be because everybody in front of you is colliding, whereas if you're in the front trying to collect the super sparks, I think that's what they're called, trying to collect the super sparks is a lot harder because there's not many collisions happening in front of you. It's kind of just whatever remains from the previous lap. And I think it's a decent not risk reward, but just a decent comeback mechanic. I wouldn't say comeback mechanics are in the spirit of F-Zero. F-Zero's, you know, famous for being brutal, the Dark Souls of racing games, if you will. But I think, especially for newer players, this might be their first going of not just F-Zero Super Nintendo, but probably just F-Zero in general. It's probably really good in their eyes. I see it as something decent. Fighting off the other players and fighting them as well is really enjoyable. I remember on this one race, I don't know if I captured footage for it, but on this one race on Deathwind 1, me and this Fire Stingray, we were both Fire Stingray, and we were just going at it at each other, trying to just spin into each other and boost into each other and hit each other as much as we can. And it got to the point where I had run out of health. I was very close to dying and he was trying to zone in on me, but then he got interrupted by someone else hitting him, and I got to barely escape with my life, even though I didn't really place well in that race. Versus, you know, watching out like a hawk for who is damaged versus who has health and trying to boost right into the person that's damaged and spin at the right time to get that extra energy back and to also increase the total amount of energy. I think it's a pretty good risk-reward system of, do I want to play defensively right now versus do I want to expend my machine's energy to potentially gain more energy when I go over the pit. I do like how the game incentivizes you to be more aggressive with the fact that there's still only one pit area. Pit area is where you recover your health in F-Zero. There's only one pit area on the tracks, just like in Super Nintendo. So the only other way to recover energy would be to destroy or KO another machine, and I think that's a really good mechanic that incentivizes not turtling and playing very defensive and being aggressive. When I had first, you know, my first few races playing, I thought the game really rewarded defensive play and kind of playing like a turtle, hanging out on the back, gaining the super sparks, and then skyway boosting to your heart's content. But when I discovered that you could kill the opponents and gain the energy, oh my god, it changed the way I play. I started playing way more aggressive and I started having even more fun than I was already having. I think the progression system with getting the decals and the different colors/skins for the machines is also a really good mechanic. SNES, as I've gone over in my previous video, does not really have a whole lot of variety and content, so the fact that they were able to relegate cosmetics as progression and not something like microtransactions, I really liked. And it's kind of fun trying to discover cool skin combinations with the machines and the decals, and then the badges, decorating your player badge, I think is really neat. On that note, they're still only the same for SNES machines, which kind of bums me out. I mean, F-Zero has all these cool characters and different machines, and I understand that they're just copying the Super Nintendo game, but I think it would be really cool in the future if perhaps they do the, like, White Cat or Rainbow Phoenix in the SNES style as new playable machines with, you know, different variety and gameplay. I think that would be pretty neat. I doubt that'll happen. I even doubt we'll even get like the Satellaview F-Zero machines as racers, as cool and as easy as that would be. But the progression system is nice, and I would say the small variety of machines that you can actually play is okay. As a SNES player, I mostly have just played the Fire Stingray, which is of course the best machine in normal F-Zero SNES, but I see a lot more of the other three machines, you know, Wild Goose, Golden Fox, Blue Falcon, and I did mess around a bit with Blue Falcon and Wild Goose, but I just mostly stuck with Stingray, and I could say with the Stingray, at least, it plays pretty similar to how the Super Nintendo version plays. Of course, the controls are much easier on the player, which is understandable. I mean, there's 98 other people to deal with, but churning was a lot easier. The game still ran at 60 frames per second, but it felt slower, than the Super Nintendo. Like in the Super Nintendo game, it feels like you move a lot faster, but in this one you move a lot slower and also easier. Not a lot slower, but definitely slower than the Super Nintendo game, even though they both run at 60 frames per second. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think if you're trying to do a battle royale with the normal speed of F-Zero Super Nintendo, it would probably suck, if I'm being honest. So slowing it down for the battle royale mechanics is pretty good, in my opinion. In terms of the gameplay modes that rotate out on a timely basis, Team Battle, Mini Pre, Grand Prix, and Pro Track, I don't think there's any more anymore, but they're all pretty alright. Pro Track isn't really needed. I don't like how the tracks are separated into two different game modes. I understand that the ones in Pro Track are a lot harder than the ones in the normal search. For those that don't know, the 7 tracks currently in the game are the 7 practice tracks that you can get in the practice mode of F-Zero Super Nintendo. And it separates 2 or 3 of them into the Pro Track, and the rest go into the normal matchmaking. I really don't think that's needed, even if they're harder. If anything, I think it would be better for the new players to be playing those harder tracks constantly to get the hang of it, and also for more variety. I don't think it's very smart to separate it. In terms of Team Battle, I think it's fun. It's fun enough for a little bit. I like how it's not just about pure placing, it's about total points scored. So it's not, you know, depending on your placing at the end of a lap, or if you hit an opponent, or if you KO an opponent, it all contributes points toward your team's final score. And I think it's pretty fun. I've played a lot of Mario Kart Clan Wars. I do like team racing. I feel like this mode can be a fun distraction for a little bit. Mini Pre and Grand Prix is definitely the meat of the game. It's like a normal race. Mini Pre takes 3 tracks at random. You play them in random order, and it functions just like a Grand Prix mode. At the end of a race, depending on where you place, you get points. The most points at the end of the Mini Pre wins. And if you get KO'd at any point during any of the 3 races, you are disqualified and can't continue, which keeps some of that F-Zero brutal gameplay intact. It's a lot of fun. I won a few Mini Pre's. I really like how the track selection isn't set in stone. It isn't concrete. It's random. And I find it a lot of fun. And then for Grand Prix, I mean, that's just the best mode in the game. You play the 5 tracks in a cup in order. So there are 3 cups in F-Zero Super Nintendo: the Knight Cup, Queen Cup, and King Cup. And they're a lot of fun. And you just play the 5 tracks in order. So right now the only one available is Knight Cup. So you get Beat City 1 into Big Blue, into Sand Ocean, into Deathwind 1, into Silence. And it functions the same rules as the Mini Pre, just spread over the entire cup. And I think it's really cool and really fun. It's essentially multiplayer F-Zero, as we've all wanted for something like F-Zero X or GX, if it would ever get remastered or ported, to be like. And I think it's great. Now, the game does have a lot of issues in the sense of variety and content in the future that I could foresee. For example, the 4 machines, in my opinion, kind of play very similar to each other. There are minute differences, you know, in terms of acceleration and handling and energy spent and all that, but I don't think it's super duper significant. And I feel like having a bigger variety of machines to play would be a great boon for this game's variety. And the other big issue is the fact that it's the Super Nintendo game, which has the least amount of tracks. There are 15, and I want to say like 6 or 7 of them are just variants of previous tracks you already played. Mute City has 3 different versions, and they're all mostly the same. You know, there's Deathwind 1 and 2, Port Town 1 and 2, Red Canyon 1 and 2, White Land 1 and 2. It's gonna run into a decent bit of variety problems as the game goes on. Right now it's a little bit rectified since it just came out, and they're gonna release the future tracks later on, which I think is a smart idea. But when all of them are released, I mean, what's the plan? Are you just gonna stop? It would be really cool if they were to port over the Satellaview F-Zero content. For those that don't know, the Satellaview, the add-on for the Super Famicom in Japan, it had some F-Zero games for it, some of which are lost media, one of which is recovered. And it would be really neat if they added those, and for the first time worldwide you could actually play those tracks. Stuff like Big Blue 2 or Mute City 4 or Metal Fort, I believe is the name. And it would just be really neat, and it would be new content that almost nobody has experienced. And that would be really good for the game's health and longevity, I feel. But right now, it does get pretty repetitive having to play the same tracks over and over. Of course, I'm used to playing those tracks over and over, time trialing them, and all that. So I don't mind a whole lot, especially right now. But way down the line, it's gonna be very not fun having to play the same things over and over and over. And I'm kind of spoiled by Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, especially because it has 48 base game tracks and 48 more with a booster course. It would be awesome if F-Zero got something like that, but unless they make new tracks and new machines, which I don't really foresee Nintendo doing, or port over the Satellaview stuff, which would be cool, but I still don't foresee them doing that, this game's gonna run into some content issues very fast. It feels more like a side mode / complementary piece to a mainline game that never came out. I was joking with some friends actually that it feels like a licensed game that a Chinese phone developer would make for the Chinese mobile market, which it has that spirit. It's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, but it kind of has that spirit. So what would I say after the first day? It's a lot of fun. It's a good game with a good gameplay loop that I think is rewarding and will draw players in. There might be some problems with variety, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that it is a quality game. And after 20 years, was it worth the wait? Kind of. It's a really fun side game, but as a mainline F-Zero game, but do I enjoy it? I would say I do. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video.